what do I think about military martial arts programs and police martial arts programs? That's this week's question of the week. I am al-Aziz, the owner and head instructor of Semper Fortis Jiu-jitsu here in San Antonio, Texas. And I'm going to tackle this week's question of the week. So, over the years, both the military and law enforcement have developed and invested into martial arts programs and tactics tailored towards the type of scenarios that they would find themselves in and that can best help their soldiers, Marines, sailors, or police officers overcome a difficult situation, being able to use just hand-to-hand combat skills. And so my basic thought of it is I think it's great, and I think it's well worth your time. Now, is it going to prepare you, whether you're doing, say, the Marine Corps martial arts program, or Army combatives, or Krav Maga, or some law enforcement tactics where they're teaching you, like pressure point stuff? Is that going to prepare you to fight in the UFC, in an MMA fight? No, absolutely not. But it's not designed to prepare you for that. It's designed to prepare you for your day-to-day military or police operations and help you, get the best possible outcome in what can sometimes be a bad scenario, where you now have to use hand-to-hand to restrain a person, or maybe in the military, because especially lately, with over the past several years, we've done more CQB, CQC, which is like close quarters combat, close quarters battle, to where maybe before we get a chance to use our primary weapon, which would be, say, a rifle, our enemy is already hands on us. And now you're trying to maintain your rifle and get past your enemy. So it's a set of skills and tactics to help you do that. So I highly recommend them. I've never trained in Krav Maga, but I know people with the Israeli Defense Force that do, and it's super effective for what they're doing, which is, it's not designed to be, to prepare people to fight in the UFC. It's designed to prepare soldiers and law enforcement officers to overcome a bad scenario and give them the best possible chance to outcome. Same thing with Army combatives. I was in the Navy for 33 years. I was stationed with the Marines for like 9 years. And I've taught the Marine Corps martial arts program and helped teach Army combatives. They're phenomenal programs for what they are, which is helping a military member get past a bad scenario. Because if you're in a situation, where you're 20 yards away from your enemy, well, yeah, your rifle would be your number one option. Your pistol, if the rifle fails, would be, like your second option. And then, third option might be your K-bar or your knife that you're carrying, or maybe your bayonet. And then, your last resort is like hand-to-hand. Do I want to be on the ground in a combat situation, using Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu? Absolutely not. But if you find yourself on the ground, or you find yourself, your opponent is on you and you're doing hand-to-hand stuff, you want to be as trained and prepared as possible to have the best possible outcome in that bad scenario. So it's not your primary option, but it's an option that, man, things go south, you can, go to that. And then, law enforcement is in a similar situation. Like if they're trying to just arrest somebody, like deadly force is not their number one option. And if they have to go hand to hand, like I've seen numerous videos where, the suspect ends up taking the police officer's weapon because they don't know how to fight, or the suspect is a better fighter than the police officer. And that's a bad scenario. So these training programs are great. I highly recommend them. They're not, your number one choice. And just realize that sometimes movies give people unrealistic expectations about what our military or even special agencies, even special warfare groups or police officers are actually trained to do. Like the ideal would be like every military member would be a black belt in some martial art. And they would be an expert shot at some martial art. And, oh yeah, like, they need no legal stuff. So, like, they would be a fully qualified attorney, so they would know the ins and outs of the law, That would be the ideal for a police officer or a military member, like, but you don't have that time to train them, to that ideal standard, so you have to develop programs, and that's what Army combatives, McMAP, Krav Maga are designed for, where, like, maybe I got a week with this person, I can train them 8 hours a day, or maybe 2 weeks, or like the Marine Corps, what we do is, as they go through boot camp, we qualify them up in McMAP in what is tan belt level. So there's a certain amount of martial arts skills that they'll have. But that's also, they're doing a certain amount of shooting skills. Now, are they leaving, shooting like John Wick? Well, no, But like sometimes, you see these movies where it's a John Wick or a Jason Bourne, and you think, oh man, that's how we train our military. It's like, no, we don't. Not even our special forces guys. Like, I've trained Brazilian jiu-jitsu with Navy SEALs and Green Berets. They're not trained to Brazilian jiu-jitsu black belt level. Like, they're not, like, there's just not enough amount of time to train them to that level. So what you're trying to train them in is the skills that they would most likely need in most likely scenarios, and how to have the best possible outcome. Nobody's coming out of training as the next Jason Bourne or John Wick. Like, that makes very entertaining movies. Matter of fact, I went to see John Wick just the other night with my wife and kids. Very entertaining movie, but just understand that's not reality. So if you're in law enforcement, whatever law enforcement training they're teaching you for hand-to-hand, very beneficial. Now, it would also be beneficial, as many law enforcement officers here, in San Antonio, they come and train with me, or they train with one of the other Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu schools, or Krav Maga schools, or Judo schools, or, karate schools. It's beneficial, on their off-duty time to train in that too. But the basics that they're teaching them in law enforcement as they go through the academy, very beneficial. Just like for our Marines, soldiers, sailors, airmen, the basics that they're teaching them in boot camp and their day-to-day job and the training they send them through in martial arts, very beneficial. Is it going to make them, invincible? No, but it's a good foundation, a good skill set. And if they can invest time outside to train martial arts, that'll make them even better. Just like, like whether you're in law enforcement or in the military, they're only going to take you to the range and require you to shoot so often, on your duty weapon, whether it's a rifle, pistol, both. But if you really want to get good, you're going to have to exceed that basic level of training, and on your off time, go to the range or go to some training courses and practice shooting even more, because they're martial arts, shooting, these are perishable skills. So the more you train on your off time, the better. But just realize that what your agency is teaching you, that basic level martial arts that they're teaching you, is very beneficial. So you don't have to apologize for the level of training that you're at, like, oh, well, I just know this. Dude, that's better than knowing nothing, because like what most people know is they know, like, oh, I'll throw a roundhouse right. And it's like, hopefully I land in a magic spot and I knock my opponent out and all is good. But the more you can add to that arsenal, because most people's roundhouse punches aren't going to land successfully. The more you can add to that, the better your chances of having a good outcome. So that's the answer to this week's question. I highly recommend, Army combatives, McMAP, Krav Maga, or whatever program your agency is teaching as a good foundation, and then build upon that on your off time and train more in everything. It's just like they're going to teach you certain laws as a basic as you get through training, whether it's law enforcement or whether you're in the military, our rules of engagement. But you can build on that, and you should build on that on your off time to understand the rules and the laws better. But your agency is not going to train you up to be a lawyer. You know, like they're not going to train you that high. To get that level of skill, you're going to have to train on your off time. So that's the answer to this week's question. Got any comments, insights below? Feel free. And until next week, ciao.